1995, the BBC screened a six-part adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. The impact it had can't be measured in viewing figures alone.
Have a care, Dawkins.
But the public watched in record numbers for a costume drama. It made a star of Jennifer Ely as Elizabeth and a sex symbol of Colin Firth. His Mr. Darcy so captured the hearts of women of all ages that he's revisited Mr. Darcy in 2 Bridget Jones movies.
Hello, Bridget.
So what was it about this particular adaptation of a love story written in the 1790s that placed it firmly in the popular cultural landscape of the 1990s?
Intrigues, seductions.
It's about timeless subjects like love and marriage and who are we going to choose.
Sex and money, those are the 2 driving forces.
I felt it just kind of upped the sexual chemistry a little bit.
You've got this sort of beating heart of real, true relationships. And I think it is one of the great love stories, isn't it?
Great love story that it is, it wouldn't have been told in quite the same way if it hadn't been for the creative partnership between the one-time English literature lecturer Andrew Davis and Sue Birtwistle, who even as his student was showing producer potential.
He used to persuade me into writing all these sketches for various kind of things that actually you turned out to be getting credit for on your coursework.
Because I did drama as well as English, that was my main subject, and you had to write a thesis, so instead I decided to put on a show and persuaded Andrew to write it.
Yeah.
So I did really well.
Davis had supplemented his income as a lecturer at Coventry College of Education by writing radio plays. His first original TV drama was set in a knicker factory, but he tried his hand at everything, even a ghost story starring Denham Elliott. But he soon teamed up with his former protégée, Sue Birtwistle, to make the children's series Educating Marmalade, starring the late Charlotte Coleman.
Stop that humming at the back.
Or you will get your body smacked. Yakety yak! Leave it out, Cock. I thought we were going swimming.
Swimming?
In the 1980s, Sue produced Dutch Girl starring Tim Spall and pre-smouldering Colin Firth, while Andrew drew on his academic background for the campus set A Very Peculiar Practice, which finally allowed him to quit the Warwick University day job and write full-time. In 1986, the 2 of them met at the screening of an adaptation of Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. The meeting would have lasting consequences in the history of costume drama.
Sue leaned over to me in the middle of this and said, what you and I ought to do is a really sexy adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And so I said, yeah, OK, let's do it.
And the following day I phoned Nick Elliott at London Weekend and said, Andrew Davis and I have got a project that we want to do with you. I said, it's simply the sexiest book ever written. Do you want to meet and have lunch? And he said, yeah, let's meet tomorrow. He was so excited. So we went to the restaurant and we wouldn't tell him what the book was. I just did a pitch as if it was a new book. And I said, you know, there's these 5 girls who all live in this house with their mother and father. Their mother's desperate to get them married off. They're desperate for men. They're short of money.
And Nick got very excited about this and thought, you know, what a hot story. You know, is it a book? Have we got the right? You know, can we get the rights?
And finally, he said, you have to tell me what this book is. And so Andrew said it's
Pride and Prejudice. And he kind of laughed a lot.
He'd never actually seen the story like that. And so he said, I'll commission it. I'll commission the first 3 scripts.
With 3 scripts commissioned, it seemed they were halfway there. But dramatising Pride and Prejudice wasn't the most original idea in the world. There'd already been a film starring Laurence Olivier and 3 television versions.
Come, Darcy, I must have you dance. I hate to see you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner.
I certainly shall not. You know how I detest it.
All the previous adaptations of Jane Austen have been very much social comedies with people buttoned up to the neck making polite conversation in wobbly sets.
Let me persuade you to follow my example and take a turn about the room. I assure you it is very refreshing. Mr. Darcy, won't you join us?
Thank you, no. I can imagine but 2 motives for your choosing to walk up and down the room together, and my joining you would interfere with both of them.
I wonder what can be his meaning.
The most recent adaptation was just 6 years previously, and there were signs in those yuppie Thatcherite times that classic drama, like Civilised Manners, was going out of fashion. This was not good news for Andrew Davis, Sue Birtwistle or LWT's Nick Elliott.
He had some difficulty then getting London Weekend to commission the last three. And this was a time when BBC wasn't doing any classic drama. So it didn't have a home to go to.
So Pride and Prejudice was put on hold. Andrew's next project brought him into contact with experienced director Simon Langton, whose previous work included Rebecca and Smiley's People. Together they made the BAFTA-winning Mother Love.
That's when I really first met Andrew. He immediately struck me. He's a very witty, quite formidable person, a wicked sense of humour, which I loved. A very wicked sense of humour, and quite, shall we say, sexually driven.
Andrew Davis and Sue Birtwistle worked together again as the writer and producer of the oddly titled Ball Trap on the Côte Sauvage. Set around a family camping trip to Brittany, in its own way it was a comedy of manners of which Jane Austen might have approved.
Paradise.
Throughout this time, although we were both working on other projects, Andrew and I did keep going back to London Weekend and the BBC trying to sell it.
Then they found a new potential ally to sell their idea to. Michael Waring, head of drama serials at the BBC. He'd asked Davis to adapt the political black comedy House of Cards to critical and popular acclaim. Following that, Waring was keen for Andrew to take on Middlemarch.
It's terrible the way we live in ease while we let our tenants rot in pigsties. We deserve to be beaten out of our beautiful houses with the scourge of small courts.
Because he was saying, once you've done Middlemarch, if that goes all right, we'll look at Pride and Prejudice.
The success of Middlemarch proved classic drama was back in vogue, and Andrew Davis had shown Michael Waring he could deliver the goods. So at last, after 7 years of trying, the carriage wheels were finally in motion. And to appeal to a 1990s audience, Davis was determined that this version would have a whole new approach.
I mean, it's got one of the most famous openings of any novel. You know, it's a universally acknowledged truth that a man with fortune must be in want of a wife. And I thought, how am I not going to start like that? And I thought, well, you've got to start with something completely different. What is the inciting incident in Pride and Prejudice? It's got nothing to do with the girls. It's got to do with Darcy and Bingley riding into Elizabeth Bennet's home county, seeing a nice house, and on the spur of the moment, Bingley deciding to rent it.
You'll find the society something savage. Country manners, I think they're charming.
If that didn't happen, none of the story could happen. We'll start with these huge galloping horses, you know, sweaty flanks, guys with tight trousers on, showing their muscular thighs, getting all out of breath, galloping across the countryside. Cut to a big close-up of Elizabeth looking down at them, thinking, wow, you know, a bit of new talent in the neighbourhood, and getting so excited she runs down the hill. So there we are, that's how I started it.
I read it and I immediately thought, my gosh, this is so different from the other productions that I'd seen.
He has 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls.
How so?
Andrew Davis had managed to give his adaptation a new lick of paint, but its fidelity to the original remained.
For a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
Jane Austen had been a best-selling author since her death at the age of 41 in 1817. 2 centuries before the Da Vinci Code, her 6 novels had sold in their millions in nearly every language on earth. Pride and Prejudice was the best known, a classic love story that follows the fortunes of the 5 Bennet sisters. Their mother's determined to get them married off to rich men so that they can look after her in her old age. But the girls themselves would prefer to marry for love.
We became a family, actually, us 5 girls, and it was interesting. We almost became... There were dynamics that were actually similar to the dynamics in the Bennet household. We all became very sisterly towards each other.
The powerhouse behind those girls was Julia Sawalha. She engendered a kind of collective family buzz.
Lord Denny, fetch me a glass of wine. I can scarce draw breath. I'm so fat.
She was forever, which sometimes annoyed other people, but it didn't me because it created that atmosphere. She was forever giggling.